Asset Arrest, your global agent for accessing the property you can't afford.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Asset Arrest, a podcast in which each episode will centre around a viewing of a different luxury property that I, Laura Yule, attend masquerading as a potential buyer with a different invited guest each time. This episode features a viewing of property on London City Island in East London with artist and researcher Alberto Duman, whose work centres around issues of the cultural production of urban space and the agency of art within the economy of this production. London City Island is a relatively large development. It's a partnership between Ballymore and EcoWorld, who are a Malaysian property developer who have, in their own words, spearheaded the regeneration of Battersea Power Station in London and other international projects in Melbourne, Sydney, London and Singapore. London City Island occupies a peninsula in the Canning Town area of East London, labelled by the developers as a mini Manhattan for London. The peninsula most recently housed a Pura Foods edible oil factory, which closed down in 2006. The island was also previously referred to locally as Bog Island due to its inaccessibility and tendency to flood. On the viewing, we learnt that Ballymore actually bought the land in 1972 and were waiting until the right time to begin the development. It's a slightly special development for me, as for 1 year I rented a studio there, leaving at the end of 2018 because, unsurprisingly, it felt like an impossible place to work as an artist, with its policed and controlled environments, the exclusion of anything that looked out of place, and the aggressive separation between so-called luxury apartments and the one block of social housing they had to provide. It's as yet unfinished, but is partially occupied and supposedly around 98% sold. It's soon to be home to the English National Ballet and London Film School. So they're really placing art and culture, or some warped form of it, at the heart of their placemaking strategies. If you have a look at their website, you'll see a number of videos of happy creative residents discussing their work and the wonderful island community they're now part of, having bought property there. So to introduce you to the development, we're going to hear a little bit from the substantial hardback brochure I was given at the viewing. Over to you.
You're listening to Asset Arrest, helping you see the most exclusive parts of the city.
London is just one of a handful of cities that can be described truly as a world capital. With its booming economy and highly skilled population, the city offers one of the most investable real estate markets in the world, a status underpinned by stable government, effective regulation, and long-standing financial strength. The era of seafaring and industry has since been replaced by a new age, defined in the Docklands by the technology and high finance that is so key to London's economy. The recent decision by Advanced Business Parks to create a major Chinese business hub and innovation quarters at nearby Royal Albert Dock will transform the 35-acre site into the European headquarters for hundreds of Chinese firms. Attracted by flexible workspaces between Shoreditch and the River Lee, from the 1980s onwards, creative professionals moved into the area en masse. This was the stomping ground for the young British artists and is now home to a swathe of internet startups. Here is Europe's densest concentration of artists and creative professionals. The island opens up to reveal a thriving square bombarded on all sides by boutiques, restaurants, cafes and pop-ups. London's City Island combines the best contemporary architecture with the built vernacular of islands and island-style communities. Upon crossing the bridge, you are plunged into an island landscape that draws inspiration from the world's most beautiful island ecosystems, bringing together a stunning utopia of lush colours and brilliant foliage that changes with every hour, day and season. The designs of the tree's containers echoes the tea chest cargo boxes of the East India Dock Company. There are forest sculptures and raised plinths, or maker's pads, for showcasing creative work, and a central space which will allow for events and public performances. One week it could play host to a Midsummer's Night Dream, another to an opera with a forest backdrop. This is a new public space for London. Islands are, thereafter, havens of individuality, So every apartment in London City Island is created with personality and for personality.
The brochure goes on to proclaim London City Island as London's most connected location, the Jubilee line as London's most vital tube line, and East London as the most exciting cultural quarter in Europe. There's really no holding back here. Yeah, so the crazy idea of this being anywhere near a public space for London is truly fully realised when you visit the site and observe the vast team of security guards in Ballymore logos, the abundance of CCTV cameras, the pristineness of everything, and the fact it all looks exactly like the CGI rendering of itself, and the fact that as a studio resident there, I was asked to tidy up the inside of my space by Ballymore because it looked messy from outside and they were trying to sell property. Rumour has it they were even asking residents who lived there to tidy the inside of their homes. Now, let's return to the Arts Club, the clubhouse or lounge in the main building that residents can use for meetings, socialising or unwinding, where Alberto and I sat down to chat before our appointment at the Sales and Marketing Suite. I should note here that it appears you can just walk in and sit down in this lounge, even though it's supposed to be for residents. Hi, Alberto.
Hey.
Thanks for coming with me to London City Island, where we're going to have a look at some two-bedroom properties. I'm just wondering, you've not been on London City Island before?
No, I haven't. I followed the development from afar, being very interested into its visual culture during the promotional phase, during the construction phase. I've done quite a lot of work, part of a larger project between 2016 and 2017, and I was engaged in sort of cultural projects that try to sort of construct a critical framework around the post-Olympic landscape of East London. And of course, the London City Island is quite a unique spot, also because it overlays onto the Lee Valley bend, the Lee River bend. They're also part of the reservoir, or the kind of the natural reserve, which is one of the most interesting biodiverse spaces in the whole area. Yeah.
Is this for the Regeneration Songs?
Yeah,
publication
thing, which is the output of the Music for Master Planning project, which is the one that I did with the Liver Home Trust and as artist in residence with UEL. So I really went. This area is actually right on the border, right on the other side of what would be the arc of opportunity of Newham, because London City Island, being in that little spot, is actually not Newham. There's already Tower Hamlets in a very strange way. The borderline is really the Lee Valley, the Lee River. So the bend of the Lee River counts as whatever's on the other side, although it feels like we haven't crossed anything, although we crossed the bridge. It's still Tower Hamlets.
So Newham, you have to get out the other side of Canning Town station.
Basically, Canning Town is in Newham, but as soon as you go over the Lee River, you're still in Tower Hamlets. So the Lee River is the border between the boroughs. However, it as a kind of a wider area of catchment of a certain regeneration impulse. Of course, London City Island development piggyback on this big Hallsville Quarter development, which is the one we just left in front of Canning Town, which is part Newham Council and part developer, and is part of a long-term regeneration strategy that really began for Newham in 2008, and then now it's powered up.
There's also Aberfeldy Village.
Aberfeldy Village is also a Tower Hamlets, so it's E14. And actually I do recommend that you look at the Aberfeldy Village commercial that is also on YouTube, which is actually, rather than going for the CGI technique, they go for the kind of like a little, it's like a graphic novel style almost. You have people that actually are doing things, and then there are speech bubbles that emerge into their real people. So they constructed it's like a little sitcom. Okay. It's like a three-minute
like
sitcom.
The project you did with the hoardings.
Well, it's actually interestingly enough. It was one inspiration. I did see that, for instance, even in Elephant and Castle, the marketing techniques of all these places hover between the high-end CGI rendering, royalty-free kind of rendered people, let's say, if they can afford the high-end ones. Otherwise, they look pretty bleak, and actually they look quite the opposite effect. They go for this kind of a serialized sitcom novel, real life scenario where they engage actors to perform the part of those who will be interested in the development.
Yeah.
They meet in town. They show you in brief all the kind of fast edited, moving storylines. That is the narrative of what they do. This place allows them to do. So the interesting
what
thing,
we're doing here, I mean, sitting in this lounge. And
well, actually, interesting enough, when they try to sort of leverage the potential of what this development has, hardly anything, for instance, in Aberfeldy Village happens in Aberfeldy Village. What they leverage is how they land in City Airport, they arrive in London, they do all kind of things in the centre of London. Only at the end of the commercial, this mini sitcom, they arrive at Aberfeldy, as if like this is a place to rest once you've done everything you need to do elsewhere in central London, because they're trying to leverage the connectivity with this place. They
so
always
you can go
sell
to Canary Wharf in
that's right.
10 minutes.
They always sell you these developments on the basis of how far you can go from them very quickly. It's really interesting that it's even the hoarding have that language. 10 minutes from Trafalgar Square, 15 minutes to King's Cross. And why? Because
it's about the speed at which you can get out of it.
It's the speed you can get out of it. So it's like how far you can go to the Eurostar if you're a European buyer, or how far you can go to London City Airport if you want to fly over, or how far you can go to any other airport so that you can fly away from here. So in a sense, it really suggests, even in a sales pitch, that this is not a place you actually will live in, but it's more a place that you purchase as a form of investment, which has all the kind of the alluring, effective kind of traps that will make its value constituted. So it's quite interesting. It's never about the development. Usually, they always show you the interior, which could be anywhere, because there's a CGI of an interior, just like an hotel or whatever. And then they show you how far you can go using all kind of transport. So the connectivity,
and they show you a view
and quality of interior, and they show you very often the drone kind of view of an elevator going up, so how much you can master the rest of the city from where you are. You know?
And here, I mean, I went to see Balfron Tower a couple of weeks ago. And
did you?
The promotional material for this basically has this view that makes it look like the only thing you can see is Canary Wharf from the window. So I think they kind of do
I wonder if they
here.
airbrush, and I'm sure there's been quite a lot of post-processing into things. I never quite noticed whether they scale things differently, or they certainly, bear in mind that the drone footage enters into the CGI environment because it's linked with the CGI, the CAD of the actual building, and so it really tells you that if you're a 14th floor, that's the view that you will have. So they all sort of like create an environment which is very constructed. So I wouldn't be surprised if even the drone footage is somehow altered in some kind of way, with shading, with lighting, to highlight the part that they want you to look at. But the persuasive nature of a CGI is something that really constructs the reality a priori. It's almost like when you enter the actual space, it feels like the interior of the exterior that you've seen as a CGI. And in fact, that's one of the most unsettling things, that even the exteriors footage in a CGI feels like an interior. Right? It feels like we are in a massive hangar.
But outside here,
where the outside,
walking in, right, it looks exactly like CGI.
The outside doesn't look like outside. The outside looks like an interior.
Yeah, but how long can that last before it's the cheap materials degrade and it starts to look like a kind of worn exterior?
Yeah.
I mean, it depends how much money they have.
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much faith in entropy, because as you see, there's a high amount of maintenance and a high amount of policing. And in a sense,
they charge the residents.
They charge the residents for this, of course, and because that maintains the illusion. If the only things that can shatter illusions on anything that appears to be new is usually entropic forces. But the only way you can control these entropic forces is usually by leveraging a really high amount of manpower and work that goes into the polishing in the constant. It's like a bit like the Olympic Park. Or what's happening in King's Cross with Argent. You have a huge amount of workforce that is constantly picking up everything, policing every corner, making sure that things are functioning in a certain way, repaving things as soon as there is a crack. You know, it's like a total sense of wanting to control the space. Not only in the now, but it's really in the value that it projects in the future.
But then, I mean, it completely is this kind of neoliberal aesthetic of like progression and the future. But I fail to believe that they are going to be able to keep up with this maintenance burden, right? I mean, of course you can keep exploiting workers.
It's an interesting investment in the future. I guess bear in mind that quite a lot of these places are sold off-plan in advance. No? Now, the fact is that when you're off-plan, you then build up the whole thing. Where there's still things happening here. It's not completed, the development. I think that the issue is not whether the place will be soulless or not. I think place can be successful within a portfolio property and still remain completely soulless and slightly degraded as well in reality. The point is when the two level of perception might meet, whether anyone will report back to say, but listen, this is not looking like the way it should. And it's usually, in a sense, the only way it can happen, being such a self-contained reality, is that someone within the development who truly purchased it for their own dream, let's say,
as a home,
realization of the dream as a proper home, call back the center of this illusory kind of machine and say, this is not what it's supposed to be like, to ask this, because I say, perhaps the question will go towards to say, but listen, let's be realistic. How genuine this sense of community that you make a lot out of this here is. I mean, I don't see that many people around, but it's,
everyone's at work though. We're here.
Of course, it's a work environment. It is a work day. It's the middle of a work day. So, you know. But exactly because of that, a middle of a work day in a residential situation,
but if there's a lot of creatives, perhaps they work at home anyway.
Well, I wonder that if in order to work at home, they will also have to be able to have self-employment status where they can offset part of their home as a work.
As in a work.
But I'm not sure, because I mean, for instance, in the videos of the animator, you know, you see the animators kind of doing something in his flat, but obviously it's like a maquette. It's not a proper job. Animation actually needs quite large spreads of tables and lighting, and you know, they actually need quite a bit of space, and I don't expect them to be able to do it in a flat, or if they did, they will have to convert the flat in a way that I'm not sure that if they're allowed, unless some of the ground floor units are where these people actually have also workshops.
There's not that many studios here. There's not. There was the space I was in. There was only 7 studios,
right? And
then there was another co-working space.
And I that's more office work. Yeah.
But other than Arbeit, I don't think there's many other workspaces yet.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, what do you think about the whole art galleries and studio providers getting in bed with property developers?
Yeah, well,
I mean, it seems the way everything's going. The people negotiating the space for artists, it's not usually the artists themselves.
Exactly what I'm saying, yes.
And,
You're absolutely right.
It feels impossible that a group of artists might come together and actually be able to negotiate a position for themselves.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because it might feel impossible, but it's what I've always hoped, to be honest. I have had several semi-disastrous sort of situations where I tried to sort of create a collective of all kind, and even as recently as a couple of years ago, I was still trying to work towards a housing cooperative, a new housing cooperative that wasn't necessarily artist-led, but certainly was populated by several of us who we call ourselves cultural producer, maybe in some kind of different way. But I do believe that self-initiated, a certain self-initiated drive would certainly salvage a lot of this rhetoric that is placed upon our own presence by those who supposedly act on our behalf. But actually do bring with them completely different agendas. They might not be necessarily damaging, but they're not. They speak in our name, but they're not us. You know, and I think that you really got that right there. They're intermediate.
It feels like they're helping us out sometimes, but
it feels like they're doing advocacy work for us, But then when it comes to it, you go to the fine grain of what these deals actually are about. Of course, the advocacy, like every worker advocacy, translate perhaps some perceived ambitions that they think we have, or some lack of ambition that they perceive that we have or don't have, bring it to the negotiating table where we are not involved, and somehow then guarantee these kind of spaces with certain contractual obligation that might or might not be exceeded by the artist. And obviously that's always the prerogative of anyone to exceed the obligation, but then that really comes down to the specific artist and what they intend to do, what they feel their role is. And it is true that just by placing an artist in a very heavily negotiated social context, it doesn't mean necessarily it turns them into socially engaged artists. It's not necessarily always the context that allows you to. But if you are an artist who are attuned to the context and needs the context to produce, which is really what I've always felt, then that is undeniable that the context it's everything, and it just. The changing context of where artists will occupy the spaces in London will produce different art. Because that's exactly what the history of artist production in urban spaces tells us, that the conditions of the urban space have altered and have affected very heavily the kind of work that the artists have produced in those spaces,
So what kind of work does an artist with the studio here produce?
What would you do here? Well, this is really interesting. Well, I think that it's being occupying a space which has been so pre-designed through active immaterial agencies of pre-visualization.
Also being disconnected literally from the surrounding area.
Right.
By this
is a hamlet. This is really the sense of being in a hamlet. It's almost like if I was an artist, probably I would set up some kind of strange mixture between CGI and a medieval hamlet soap opera, perhaps, that happens around here, where somehow some strange gruesomeness. Of course, you can go the high-rise sort of Ballardian kind of dystopian kind of way, which would be really easily set in this kind of settings. I mean, look at where we are now in this room. A couple of creepy notes and a panning all around would just make the whole thing already set. It's just enough long ding dong. We're here, right? So, but the other one, I think it would be to sort of challenge the prefiguring, the history of anticipation and prefiguration that the developer really bank on in these kind of situations, where, in a sense, they pre-design the space way before its realization in a very social sense. So that there is a huge social control and engineering of what the spaces will be, by as if signifying the sense that these spaces can only produce one type of sociability.
Yeah.
And this sociability is the one that we already showed you in the CGI. In the fly through.
They write
where
the script
cappuccinos,
and then you turn up
and you fill it. It's like, this is why I call these people ghosts in reverse. This idea of the ghosts that actually occupy the space before our arrival rather than the one left after our departure. So in a sense, by arriving here, whoever arrived here certainly fills up the spaces of the ghost.
Yeah.
In reverse.
Yes. So we're going to go now and see some property, and I guess we're going to be a kind of different version of the ghost. I think we're certainly occupying some sort of ventriloquists of some sort.
Okay.
Thank you for this.
Let's do it, and we will see what happens.
Asset arrest, making contact, gaining access, asking questions, wasting time.
At this point, we finish talking and go round the corner for our appointment in the sales and marketing suite. We had little plan of how to approach this interaction, and I couldn't remember what I'd told them my budget was. Alberto carried his bike helmet in one hand, but announced upon entering the meeting that he'd just flown in from Milan. We didn't realise this was strange until much later. We got coffees, San Pellegrino, and perched awkwardly on a couch, quietly chuffed about our free beverages. In each viewing, I'm going to ask my guests to suggest or come up with an idea with me for something that stands in for the conversation we had with the sales assistant. This time, Alberto has initiated a short reenactment of the viewing.
Summary keywords: building, people, bedroom, apartment, floor, nice, view, space, big, bought, 18th floor, higher, price, depends, pay, facing, west, amazing, picture, to own that land and when is it appropriate to build on that trust. Bottom fell out of the market, was just not a good time. Done planning application decisions finalized, and that was done. My trauma decided that this was the place that I wanted to move to. That's a bit crazy to say, but it is relatively central, isn't it, compared to got one of the guys here was the original Bill Dahlia when he initially, obviously it wasn't the initial barrier, and now he is the most. Now he is, so he bought off plan ages ago when he made his money, because not everyone goes to the theater and my big park. Yeah, so you haven't got everyone is the big part, so not everyone is going in is the big guy. Yeah, so not everyone can afford $500,000. More people like Laura, for instance, are coming in they can use to flip-flop a whole day. He loves that they need, and he took a beating us tonight. Somebody in the indoor pool. We're doing another gentleman provocation about budget of $1 million. Okay, I know that to be honest, I don't really need more than 2 bedrooms. Yeah, I inherited some money. And I want something that's a good investment. I really like, because I'm planning to live in it. Yeah, you want something that's got to be made. It was Canary Wharf in the city. Yeah, nice sunset. He also wants something sort of hierarchy. Yes, you can sell it on as soon as you pay the 10% deposit. Yeah, you like angular layout, because sometimes quite an adventure. The Italy, they know the modern is a place your fridge freezer is to the left of you with your shame points and things, and if your teeth brushes or whatever, nice ice bath, again attractiveness, ceramic. Warehousing, take that sort of type of window. New York. Yeah.
Asset arrest, making contact, gaining access, asking questions, wasting time.
I should apologise here for the poor quality audio you're about to hear, but these viewings involve a bit of trial and error, and this process is new to me, so there will be some changes as time goes on. Yeah, okay, so we're just finished with our viewing meeting, which lasted, I think, an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It was a lot of, to be honest.
We arrived just before 2, and we left at 3:15.
Why do they do this build-up? It's such a build-up in the sales suite, and then you're kind of like, just show us what you've got. But I guess they've got quite a few, so they don't want to waste too much time.
I think that they're trained in a certain kind of way to obviously tailor your choice. Bear in mind that this is beside the social housing, this is a sort of luxury.
A lifestyle, she said.
This is a lifestyle. People here have a lifestyle.
Living a lifestyle.
People here are living a lifestyle,
So we're buying a lifestyle. Yeah. I found her, I don't know, she must be good at what she does, but maybe I don't know. I didn't find her that warm. What I want.
Not at all. But you bear in mind that there is a certain... I guess there are certain characters that the buyer expects as well, particularly when they're mostly foreign buyers.
Yeah.
They expect a certain degree of character that is English as well, a certain Englishness.
Yeah.
And so perhaps she embodies quite well that sort of like partly detached and cool.
And she had an air of wealth about herself.
Of wealth, exactly.
Yeah.
You have to, when they do these things, they probably teach you have to project.
She must value. She's bought two properties here or something, did she say? As an investment. Might be a lie, but it's probably not. Staff discount.
Well, I guess certainly. And they probably also have to say that. I don't know, to say, well, have you bought? Because it's one of the proof to say, but would you live here? And she said, no, but that's because of size, not because of...
maybe she has kids.
So definitely,
And a family, Well...
I don't know. We had a certain queasiness, didn't we, at some point I wanted to run away halfway through.
Yeah.
No, actually, I tell you what, 10 minutes through it, when she left us, and she went to pick up the stuff.
I thought she was like Googling us and figuring out that we were liars.
Exactly. I thought that too. And I thought, okay, this is time to leave. But my helmet was already behind the desk, and I thought...
just flown in from Milan.
With my helmet.
With your helmet.
I had an alibi.
See, I don't know. I go in with all these ambitions of what I'm going to say, and then I immediately just play the idiot who's like doesn't know anything about buying property.
I think that works
true.
Well. I think that works very well.
When she said stamp duty,
but it's okay. It's okay because people, you don't have to assume that people with money knows about certain things. That's what, and also it's good to bring back to them to explain everything. You don't have to assume that you know anything. It's always good to hear it from them.
And when she asked square footage, I'm like, I have never viewed property and thought about such a thing.
Well, my issue is more to do with the reason why all this emphasis on square footage is because most people buy off plan.
Yeah.
So when you buy off plan and you don't see it and you only see the CGI, which, as we know now, having been there, means hardly anything in terms of what a perception is. And then again, so much of the sale is done through that. Yeah. This is the way we are referring back to those ideas of the reality of what an artist might do in a certain situation. You know, imagine having an augmented reality situation where you have the CGI and the reality sort of overlapping on the screen as you look through the mobile phone, and you'll find that obviously the wide angle of the CGI always gives you the sense that there are very large spaces because the camera pan and turn is huge. And I have to say, it is quite general, but it is, it was an odd... The beds were very small, did you notice? The beds are very small. That's why it feels like that they are double. But those are small beds.
If I'm spending that much on property, I'd want a bigger bed, I guess. But I want...
And did you notice that the window did not open all the way? I thought that was really badly designed.
Yeah, well, that's I once ended up speaking to some of the guys who were working on the building. Yeah. And they told me everything was built with the cheapest possible materials, you know.
When you try to hang something from those walls.
Also, standing on that balcony, I felt a little scared, I have to say. Especially after, did you see this story of a Ballymore development in West London last summer? Some balconies set on fire. Yes. Like they just caught fire in the sun. Yeah, I don't know. That concerns me.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no cladding here, so I would have asked that. Although, perhaps you would want to know, is that cladding fireproof? But that's not. It doesn't exist in the other places. This, as you notice, this is the only building that has mixed brick and cladding. Now, this is the funniest thing. So this guy was just coming up. I know him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Now, what the hell would you do here?
Why did we know all these people here?
Why do we know everyone here? You want to put it on pause? Now, I don't know whether there's part of me that finds me morally repellent. Just to have been...
Finds yourself,
find myself morally repellent to have even entertained this thing. But this is what anthropological...
It's troublesome, right? The way you start feeling.
Yeah, well, you cannot be an embedded participant without time losing. I think this is a classic thing that ethnography always talks about. Yeah. How when you impersonate the other, you become it. And also, I think that what ethnography does in this case is it really puts you very close to the realities that you criticize, and you realize how the degrees of separations are fairly inexistent. Yeah. It's normal when you're on this side. I don't know. See what it feels like now, cycling back into the real world.
And when she says, like, students, like international students, they want to live here because it's an island, so it's safe. It's like, since when did islands become havens of safety? Street level. And so we parted ways, and I went home to reflect upon the idea of the view of the city as private property, the material reality of the flimsy balconies and small rooms, questions of entropy, our faith in it, our ability to control it, the labour of maintenance, the cost of maintenance, the notion of the island as a safe space, and the challenge of or devisualising an overly controlled and visualised space. The launch of this podcast and the forthcoming episodes have been made possible thanks to support from the Newbridge Project in Newcastle, Durham University's Politics of Urban Social Innovation project, and ZKU Centre for Art and Urbanistics in Berlin, where I'm currently working on a series of episodes centering around viewings of luxury property in Berlin. Stay tuned for updates, and please get in touch if you'd like to view some property you don't want to buy with me. Goodbye.